This call is being recorded.
Okay, so would you mind, before we start off, giving us an overview of your background and previous experience?
Sure. So I've been with Biogen about 6.5 years. And with Biogen, I spent the bulk of my time leading one of the account teams, the regional account team, back when it was one national team. And then subsequently, we broke it into an East and a West group. So I had led one of those teams. Most recently, over the past 4 or 5 months, I took a role in Weston heading up the Payer and Channel Marketing group, which is a diverse group that actually handles the liaison between the brands and ensures that there's a payer strategy that the brands have that can be executed at the payer level. We also have a government affairs person. We have a patient services lead on our team, and we have an insights and analytics team as well on the Payer and Channel Marketing group. So it's kind of a diverse group. Before coming to Biogen, I had probably, I want to say about 15 plus years experience in various market access roles, from account management to team leadership to contracting and so forth. And prior to that, it was sales and marketing roles that various levels within the organizations that I worked for.
Okay. And then what is I guess we'll kind of just start off with, what is your view on the role of the market access organization?
So the market access team has kind of a dual role. We are charged with ensuring that all of our third-party customers, which largely are the payers, in the PBMs, the federal MACs, and so forth. We're charged with ensuring that they understand and can appreciate the value of the products that we offer and the value of partnering beyond our products with our organization. So that's kind of like the external-facing role. The internal-facing role. The internal-facing part of the job is to ensure that as I stated earlier, that the brand has a line of sight into a strategic approach that embraces payers' goals and objectives, and that our sales team is able to execute on the unique market access landscape associated with their areas. Okay,
and how do you think how do you think the current MANR group is performing in those roles?
So I think right now we're performing very well. I would say we're balancing those external customer needs effectively and efficiently working internally with our customers. I think the part of the breakdown is, and maybe we'll talk about this a little bit more, is on the internal side of things, having the overall organization embrace the potential that market access has as an opportunity to drive business.
Actually, if you want to talk more about that now, we can actually dive into that topic.
Oh, sure. So a lot of it ends up being in and around the areas of pull-through, just because of the nature of the categories that we compete in. Traditionally, the sales force has not been challenged with many of the formulary enforcement or access issues that I think many of them are used to dealing with in other categories. Now, that doesn't mean to say that there aren't prior auths and administrative work that's associated with having patients get our products. That's always going to exist for high-cost specialty drugs. But once physicians kind of go through those pathways for access, whether it's a prior auth or looking for a medical exception or so forth, generally the products have been made available to patients. So our individuals on the sales force have not really tasted the effects of having formulary restrictions and blocks that maybe they've experienced in the past. And as a result, when we have individual wins by payer, sometimes the sales force is not as readily accepting for having a unique payer-specific message for that doctor.
So, Paul, this is Rebecca. Do you have a formal pull-through approach that's, that the sales teams have been trained on, and the regional account teams have a role, the market access teams have a role, and even brand marketing has a role? Do you have something formalized like that?
Yeah, so we had in the past, and because of some of the issues that we've dealt with, it's kind of fallen to the wayside, and it's been, frankly, just a lack of traction that we've gotten with the field. However, with that said, Rebecca, there is a kind of a revised interest and approach, and I'm sure you've heard from Jen with regard to the focus that we have moving forward on with the organization on pull-through. Jen has actually recently, and by recently I mean over the last probably 3-4 months, has gotten alignment with not only her boss but the senior VP of sales and marketing. That yes, indeed, we need to kind of refocus our approach to pull through and revisit where we've been and enhance our efforts at pull through. So with that said, we are actually in the midst of developing a very detailed pull through approach. We've revised our analytics. We're currently in the process of training the entire sales force, in addition to the RAMs and MAMs, with the use and application of those analytics. We are developing unique templates that, as a win occurs, the account manager would be charged with populating the templates that would be representative of the particular pull-through plan for that payer. And I'm actually, interestingly, I'm going to be presenting this tomorrow to USLT, and next month at the summit meeting, we'll be rolling this out a little bit on a broader scale to the entire sales force. And so the sales force is going to be more closely aligned with the goals and objectives of individual contracts and their role in executing on the deliverables that have been agreed upon for those contracts.
Good. You know what? Because we do a lot of pull-through benchmarks, so we'll put in here as well just some what we consider some best practices for you, just to have as well of what we see that works best at a high level. I mean, it'll just tell you process maps and like a general RACI chart of who's responsible, who's accountable, et cetera, things like that.
Sure.
Because I mean, one of the tough things about pull through is it has so many different functional areas that are involved, and they all have to know their role, right? And what the follow-through and the performance metrics and the expectations are, and a lot of it has to do with communication at the end of the day, right?
Sure.
Yeah, so we'll include that in some of the, because when we look at the account teams, we always look at cross collaboration and what pull-through is on part of that. So that's something we can certainly add, and you can use that as an additional resource there.
Okay, sure. Thanks. Yeah.
So just to start diving in a little bit, when you think about the role of the marketing team and the support that you provide to your customer-facing teams, do you have priority brands that you work with, or you work across the entire portfolio of what is in line today?
Yeah, so the structure of market access in general, and then my team specifically, is that we carry the entire Biogen bag. So we have all of the 4 key MS products. We work with the SMA team for Spinraza, and additionally, we are developing the market access piece of the go-to-market strategy for Alzheimer's space.
Oh, okay, that's right, because you have that very important launch that you're working on.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little ways out, but you have to start early because you're really first in the class, and it's going to be a game changer. So when you think about your stakeholder engagement, like let's talk internal first, Paul. Who do you normally, when you cross-collaborate, how closely do you work with the brand marketing team in developing the value story for your core customer base?
Yeah, so the way we have it aligned is I have a contact, one of my associate directors that are linked directly to each of the brands. So I have one that's linked to the Alzheimer's team for go-to-market. I have one that's linked to the SMA team for Spinraza, and then I have one linked over to the MS team for Tysabri, Tecfidera, Plegridy, and Avonex.
Ooh, okay. And do they work with the brand teams or to develop the value story, or to align the value story against what their positioning is? You define kind of like that process if you're creating a new resource for the account team.
Correct. Exactly. They work very, very closely with the brands. In fact, they're with them, virtually every day.
Oh.
And they're part of the brand teams. They provide the insights into ensuring that value story has an application to the payers, and then we'll take that value story and craft material that supports that value story that the RAMs and the NAMs can execute actually with the payers to ensure the payers realize the entire value of the individual brand or the category, in the case of MS, for all of their providers, their members, and their employer groups.
And are those team members co-located with the brands, or do you sit together under market access on the market access area, so to speak?
So we're all under market access. All of the entire market access group is together. Payer channel marketing, contracts and pricing, and actually trade and distribution is housed with us, even though that there's kind of like a matrix alignment to Jen with trade and distribution. But there's obviously what I'm describing is a matrix organization. So there's dotted line responsibilities to the brands and to all of the cross-functional partners.
Yeah, I mean, you see, I just want to make sure some of them, you have some organizations that have, even though they report into market access, they sit with the brand teams, and I just wanted to know if there was that. That doesn't happen very often, and part of me is when we do these benchmarks, we're not too sure if that's really a good thing or a bad thing sometimes.
Yeah, Rebecca, I've actually seen it both ways. In fact, when I was at AstraZeneca, the payer and channel marketing group did sit with the brand, and it's a business decision that an organization has to make. It, that when you choose to have them co-located, you gain something, but you give up something. And likewise, when you choose to have them located, as we have all within market access, you could say you lose something, but you gain something. And at AstraZeneca, when they did kind of deploy them individually to the brands, they were co-located on site with all the brands scattered throughout the floors and actually buildings. And what you ended up having happen is that there's a loss of the overall market access payer-related strategy. There becomes a disconnection between what one brand is looking to accomplish with payers versus another brand. And you have to remember that when we look to impact our payers, we're doing it all from the same sales team, i.e. the NAMs and the RAMs. So you have to make sure that there's a close alignment between what payer channel marketing is doing, because it's going to be executed by the same team.
Well, you're absolutely right, and I think that's what the big problem is, because at the end of the day, they tend to become another brand marketer. And then, as well as we do, is that, even creating the resources and the presentation decks and even the messages, even though they end up, the meaning is similar, the approach needs
Yeah.
to be different. And if you don't understand that payer customer, because they have a very different set of goals than an HCP, and you start seeing that disconnect. So, we tend to have a little bit of a lean towards the consolidated group like you have. So, because when they're going in and they're discussing things, I mean, today they're discussing one thing, tomorrow they may be discussing something else. You only have 20, 30 minutes, and you need to get your high points there, and it isn't a sales and marketing message. So that's why if we hear, when we actually do payer research as well for our clients, we hear coming back, oftentimes, we just wish it wasn't so sales and marketing. we have different things going on. And you want to build a relationship because their expectation is you need to understand our operational goals, right? And you need to have that clear distinction, and there is a clear distinction. And oftentimes what happens when we work with marketing teams, brand marketing, the payer side of the business or the customer side is really complex, and drivers of choice are very different. And it's a little bit harder for them if they're not exposed to it. So that's my little soapbox.
No, it's true. And Rebecca, so when we were building our team for SMA, the sales team and the marketing team as we were getting prepared for the launch of Spinraza, we were kind of working through all of these dynamics, and it became very clear that, hey, there's going to be some payer-facing strategies that we need to ensure are executed appropriately, and this whole conversation around that single point of contact, i.e. the RAMs and the NAMs to the payers, became a point of conversation, and as you would probably imagine, the logical ask from the brand would be, well, why don't we just develop our own account management team to call on the payers? And I know some companies have kind of started to go down that route, and I'm sure it's certainly in your role, guys, you've heard it loud and clear. The payers do not want more than one account manager for a manufacturer calling on them, and we had that conversation with the brands, and we've agreed that, hey, we are going to continue to go the same route as other organizations have gone, and continue to go as a best practice approach to dealing with our customers, and that is a single manufacturer face to the payers. And so there continues to be that dialogue internally at Biogen. I don't know if you heard that or not, but I think that it's a healthy dialogue to have, but I think the end result needs to have people internally learn why we're making the strong recommendation that we continue with one face to the payers.
Oh yeah, it's very. We actually had a question come up about that, and I didn't really realize the context because I didn't get the context. But nevertheless, I said no, it needs to remain. On the market access side, because the customer base is very different, and what we've seen. What we've seen is if you do have a split, oftentimes it's because their portfolios are so big that you may have, like one organization I know has a oncology account team. Not saying that it works super well, but they have over 30 drugs. So, and they have like 5 or 6 different therapeutic areas. So it's very complicated and it's very big. So they did pull it out. I would say the execution is not going as well as it could be, but they felt that if they had focus, they could do it. But they had like, 7 or 8 drugs just on the oncology side that they had to worry about. So, sometimes you say maybe your portfolio is just too big that you may have to split it out. And then they usually do either like a gen meds and an oncology or something like that. So that's really the only reason where you could say, okay, I could argue that, but when you get into the head, like the national account lead, like for UHC or for Aetna, they still have one, and they may have a team underneath that's split between, on the medical side of the business and on the pharmacy side of the business. So, but at the end of the day, it's still one lead on that that team, and then they have NAMs underneath or something like that. So that tends to what they do. So when you think about other cross-functional Do you work closely with anybody in the medical affairs, such as HUR or the medical science liaisons in kind of crafting a go-to-market?
Yeah, we work very closely with the medical team. The MVLs, which is what we call our MSLs, are probably our closest customer-facing partner. In my old role, when I headed up the account team and I made calls with my account managers on customers, I would say upwards of half the time we would be with an MVL as well. I mean, we're very, very closely linked with that medical team. And as far as the outcomes and the HEOR folks, we only have a couple of them internally at Biogen, but again, we're linked very closely with those folks as well, because part of what we try to accomplish with the payers is broader and beyond actually just having a line of sight back to the individual products. Like in the case of MS, for example, we're talking about partnering with Biogen to have payers understand the value of managing the entire patient journey in MS. And part of that conversation, a big part of that conversation ends up being around all of the downstream medical impacts of managing the patient journey. And so we've aligned very, very closely with our medical team and helping to drive that conversation.
Oh, good. So in other words, what I'm thinking of is that you're looking at the patient journey, and then you're overlaying that access journey with the opportunity levers, especially for patient management, through some of your patient access and support programs as well. So you're tying that all together. That's really
Correct.
Good. And then, if I understand correctly, you do some patient access within your organization?
When you say support, patient access?
Patient support. They're called, patient access and support, or, the
field access reimbursement. Both.
Yeah, those things.
Yeah, so the patient support is actually mostly driven through our patient services group. I don't know if you've talked with any of it. Actually, yeah, I think I had you linked with a couple of folks from patient services and talking about all of the patient-facing resources housed in the larger category of that platform that we have called Above MS. Have you heard about that at all?
Not a whole lot. I know we spoke with a few folks that are out of North Carolina, I believe.
Yeah, so all of the patient-facing support work is actually not generated by market access. It's for the most part. There's a couple things, but for the most part, the patient-facing support is developed through patient services and is a much larger set of resources that's housed largely online, but then we do have patient-facing support people down in RTP in terms of case managers and individual patient advisors. We do in payer and channel marketing, we've developed some patient support material in terms of helping them with working through some of the general reimbursement pathways, which we also have available for providers as well. We've provided some tools to help them navigate for instance, the open enrollment process for Med D, and to help them understand what our patient support and copay programs and so forth looks like. But that's more on the kind of the access to the drug and the support on drug therapy and management itself all comes out of patient services.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we see that. But you do collaborate closely is what just want to make sure you get at.
Oh, my gosh, yeah. Absolutely we do. In fact, as I mentioned earlier, someone on my team actually is housed in RTP, and she is our liaison into patient services.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that because I heard you say that you do work closely, and I just wanted to understand exactly from what perspective. And then when you think about the development of the resources, the value story, how do you work with? I know your HOR team is small, but do you tend to share just like a sharing of knowledge of what the payers are like, or the market environment. Not that you can influence what HUR does, but you could share what you believe the landscape is and the environment is, and then they can take that information and build their own resources. Because what I'm trying to get at is you want to make sure that core message is aligned, even though they're coming from different perspectives.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. So we are, when it comes to HEOR as well as just the broader medical as represented by the MBL team, we are consistently talking about the goals and objectives of our customers, the payer customers. And I know on the HEOR side, they have a number of activities and different plans that they are actually working through in terms of developing white papers and analyses and so forth that they'll share with us. We'll talk with HEOR and the MBL team with regard to what some of the broader goals of our customers are relative not only to the MS and SMA space, but just in general how they're trying to work through ensuring that they have the value that would ultimately lead to member re-enrollment and retention and satisfaction of their plans. We've actually made we do make a number of joint calls with HEOR as well. I know before I came into this role, we actually had a cross-functional meeting with some of the folks on the pharmacy, medical, and outcome side of things at UPMC, and then we had our similar folks on our end meet with them, and we had a really good conversation with regard to maybe some of the ways that we can look at partnering in the areas of managing patient-reported outcomes and potentially even having some kind of contractual relationship built around those.
So are you talking your home office team that goes out? Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah, we see that here and there. Some people actually, the bigger ones have actually a separate group, but it's really starting to build out. The value proposition from the payer perspective is more outcomes and value based. So entering into those partnerships, because real world data, they want to see real world data. So that sounds really good. When you think about the resources that your team builds for the account team, what are some of the resources that you have created for the account team's toolkit?
So I guess they would fall in a couple of larger buckets. First of all, we have the overall kind of value prop approach that is more of a product and a category of value prop to help payers understand the value not only, for instance, with MS of having Biogen products available, but then drilling down specifically to the individual products. We do have a number of value prop resources that talk specifically about Tysabri, Tecfidera, and then Avonex and Plegridy, and then we have resources that kind of apply to all three. We also then have, when it comes to MS, one of our approaches, you probably have heard this in interviews with the rest of the team, but the approach that we want to ensure that payers embrace is understanding that the disease state of MS is a very heterogeneous disease state, and because of that, we have to ensure that there is a myriad of products available at the provider end to treat patients, because what works for one patient is not going to work for another, and so forth, because they all have different MOAs, and it's not like you're picking like one SSRI or one statin or one PPI or so forth. All these MS drugs have different MOAs. So what we've provided the account team are different tools to help them have that conversation around open access, and we've had a number of series, deck series, for instance, presentation series that are centered around MS being a different disease state. It's called MS is Different. And then we've had another a set of work streams that are built around the work that we commissioned Milliman with several